Hello and welcome back to my writing vlog series. This is writing vlog number 46. Despite the number, I recently started drafting a new novel, and that is Nature's Culling. I'm recording this on the 9th of April 2026. I figure it's nice for you to know which day I'm recording my writing vlogs, so you know how long ago it was that I actually worked on the novel once the video is live or not live, but once it's up on YouTube. If all goes well today, I should be able to write 2 chapters, and those are chapters 6 and 7. In terms of the plot points in the 27 chapter method outline, I'm going to write the consequence and pressure plot points. In this next chapter that I'm going to write, which is chapter 6, I am going to shift the story in a new direction because, at least in my outline, I have stated that this virus is basically over now, so some time has had to have passed by then, and it's not fully gone, but it's not a big threat anymore, and people have either died or become immune. And I figure that someone somewhere has made a cure for this disease, so the virus isn't the big threat in the story anymore, but something else is going to be a threat. It has turned out that these 4 people that came to the ranch to get help are going to stay at the ranch, and I figured that now that one of the helpers has died from the virus and the other one has left, and she isn't going to come back, then Kenny and Penelope need new helpers at the ranch, and I figured that these 4 strangers are going to stay at the ranch with her siblings. Maybe they would have some family somewhere else that they can live with, but I figured that these 4 people are just going to stay at the ranch. They're going to live there and they're going to help out at the ranch, and so they work for their living costs. So them being at the ranch has to be paid for somehow. Before, Kenny and Penny had Walt and Melody help them, but now Ryan and Charlotte are working at the ranch, and her younger siblings are just going to stay there too. Maybe they would need to go to school or something, and maybe they do that, but maybe when they're not at school or not doing homework, they can help with the farm or the ranch as well. Not because they need to in order to pay for them living there, but because they want to help out. But I figured that a young girl and a young boy would find it interesting to help with the pigs and the chickens, and maybe also the horses, and then they can help out and get something in return in terms of food and water, of course, something to drink, and then just get by living at the ranch. I haven't fully decided whether these 4 people, these strangers, are going to stay at the ranch forever or as long as the story is going on, but for now I have this plan that they're just going to stay at the ranch even after the virus is no longer a threat, and they could leave, they could go somewhere else, but maybe they have adjusted to the ranch life and just want to stay there and help and then make a living that way. Earlier today, before I started recording this and before I looked at my story or the outline I have in my document and look at what I'm going to write next, I watched a short on YouTube, and it was a young woman who is writing a novel, and she's working on her novel every weekday. I would like to work on my novel every weekday as well, but if I can just get to work on it 1 or 2 weekdays a week, then I still make progress. But what she said is that she's working with 2 terms I have never heard before, but I get what she means, I think, because she was talking about inhale and exhale beats. So I don't know if you can figure out what that means, but what I'm thinking is that the inhale beats are the most interesting beats in terms of what happens, because it's very hectic. It might be hectic, but it's the chapters or the scenes where the reader is kind of holding his or her breath, and then what is going to happen. It's so interesting. and then the exhale beats are the slower parts where the reader gets some time to relax and reflect together with the characters. So I'm hoping that by following this 27 chapter method outline that I naturally go through inhale and exhale beats, these plot beats in my story, but they're just called something else. I don't know if it would be a nice assignment for me to do, to go through all of these plot points in the 27 chapter method outline and then try and figure out whether it's an inhale or an exhale plot beat. Maybe most of them or maybe all of them can be both, but I figured that some of the plot points need to be the inhale plot beats. For example, the battle and the climax. Those need to be the inhale plot beats, I guess. And others with the reflection, where the reader and the characters get some time to relax and take some time off and just chill and reflect on what has happened. And an example of that, I think, would be, or it's an obvious example, but that would be the resolution plot point. It's what wraps up the entire story, but during the course of the story, before we get to the battle and the climax, I figured that the rest of the plot beats are going to either be inhale or exhale plot beats as well. But yes, that was just a thought I had because you talked about inhale and exhale beats. I have heard this before, that you shouldn't just write a story where it's all go, 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 without any chances of chilling and reflecting on the things that happen in the story. But on the other hand, you shouldn't have these very slow chapters, or I have a lot of those in a row where nothing really happens and there's plenty of time to relax and just reflect on what is happening and what the characters are going to do in the coming chapters or the coming parts of the story. So if you have too much action in a row, then it will tire the reader because the reader will get exhausted because too much is happening. And on the other hand, if too little is happening, it will be boring to read as well. So I have mentioned it in earlier writing vlogs before that you need to balance this, that you have to have this mix between the highs and the lows. So there's a natural development in the story in terms of action and then reflection, action and reflection. You don't have to have one with action and one with reflection. You don't need to switch it up for every chapter in your story, but I think that you should try to mix it in a natural way so that the characters aren't just going on a wild ride the entire time. So maybe you can compare this to a roller coaster. If a roller coaster was all excitement the entire way and it was twists and loops and high speed all the way, maybe the passengers on that ride would simply pass out because it would be too much at once and no time to take a deep breath and then prepare for the next twist or turn or whatever is coming. But on the other hand, if it was just going one way and a few turns on the way at a slow pace, then the passengers on that ride would probably fall asleep. So you can think of it that way. So a good roller coaster ride, according to me, is one that has these slow rises where you know there's going to be a drop. You build up to it, but when you reach the peak, you're at the top of the ride and then you take a deep breath and then the roller coaster just whooshes downward and there are going to be some other twists and turns on that ride. But then after a few intense moments, the roller coaster will slow a bit again and you can get to enjoy the scenery and look at the surroundings and then prepare for the next high. So maybe that's a metaphor. I don't know if it's a simile or metaphor or whatever it is, but I hope you get the comparison I'm trying to make. That was a side note. I'm going to jump into my novel and just write hopefully both of these two chapters, chapter 6 and chapter 7, and then I will get back to you and talk to you about how it went and what I wrote. Hello again. It's about 4 hours later, and I have now written chapters 6 and 7. For chapter 6 I wrote 3,109 words, and what I had in my outline for chapter 6 was, maybe things aren't that bad after all. Only about 20% of the Earth's human population perished. Some people are getting immune or are immune or getting the vaccine, and eventually the disease stops spreading. With time, the disease is eradicated. So if you look at this part that I have in my outline, it's very broad. It summarizes what happens. So it's natural that everything that would be included in a chapter like this is told via exposition, or instead of showing these things happen. I didn't want to show everything because that would take up a lot of words and pages in my story, and that's not really the focus of the story. So I wanted to just kind of sum up everything that's been happening with the virus and where the characters are now. So what happens in chapter 6 is that my characters are at the hospital and the disease is under control now, basically, and that people are getting vaccines. And so Penny and Kenny, as well as Charlotte and her boyfriend and her sister and brother, are at this hospital to get the vaccine so they can withstand this virus and survive that. Chapter 6 is basically a chapter where my characters talk a lot, but via the dialogue I reveal certain things about the characters and people they know. And so in this chapter they're talking about the virus and how time has passed, and that I think it's in this chapter 6 that I mentioned that Charlotte's hair has gotten longer. I think it's in this chapter, I'm not sure. I mentioned somewhere that Charlotte's hair, it used to be very, very short, but time has passed and now her hair is long enough to wave in the wind. I imagine that it's still pretty short, so it stands up on her head or something like that, but it can move in the wind because it's getting longer. But that was a side note. Charlotte and Ryan and Charlotte's two siblings are at the hospital to get the vaccine, along with Kenny and Penny. But the chapter opens when Kenny and Penny have just gotten out of the room and gotten their shots. So they've been vaccinated and they talk while Charlotte and Ryan and the two kids get their vaccines as well. Via the dialogue, I reveal certain things, as I said before. One of those things that I reveal is that Charlotte's parents both died because of the virus. And so they know, she and Ryan and the kids know that the virus is dangerous. So it's important for them to be safe as well, I figure. I don't state it directly, but they left the city behind and came out to the ranch and they stayed there. And so it's evident to the reader, or I hope it's evident to the reader, that they want to be safe because the virus is dangerous or was dangerous and they wanted to be isolated from that. But because she lost both of her parents to the virus, she knows that it's sad to have a child grow up without its parents. At the hospital, they also talk about wanting to have children. Kenny and Penny want to start a family of their own, and Penny figures that she might be pregnant because she missed her period. And then Charlotte reveals, ta-da, I'm pregnant! And her boyfriend didn't even know that she was pregnant. And so it kind of ruins the fun, or ruins the happy moment that Kenny and Penny have, because they're excited that Penny might be pregnant, but then Charlotte says that she's pregnant. And it's hard for Penny to handle that. I don't state it directly in the novel, but it's an issue for them, and I come back to it in the next chapter. I don't even remember now whether it was Kenny or Penelope who said something about it, the fact that a child growing up without its parents would be really sad, and she doesn't want that to happen to her. And if she and Kenny have a baby, she wants to be there for the baby. until it has grown up. So it kind of rubs salt in the wound because Charlotte is still grieving over the loss of her parents, and her two siblings are small and maybe they're too young to know what's really going on. But they know it's important to get the vaccine. Charlotte is kind of annoyed and sad that they mention this thing about kids growing up without their parents, and that's what she's doing along with her sister and brother. Another thing I mentioned in this chapter that takes place at the hospital is that something is still off, or something is off with Kenny's leg. He got hurt, and it turned out that there was a side effect to that, or a consequence of him hurting his leg. 2 writing blogs ago, I think, I said something about his injury and me wanting to make that have some kind of significance to the story instead of just, oh, he's hurt, and then, oh, he's over the injury, and it was no problem at all anyway. It's kind of like I led up to something, but then it didn't happen, and so now I'm thinking that I'm going to have to adjust a bit in the 1 or 2 of the previous chapters about his injury, because some time passed a few chapters ago, and then he's over his injury and he walks normally and there's no problem with that. So I'm thinking that I need to weave in something about his injury being a hindrance still. I talked about this 2 writing blogs ago, I think it was, when I said that he couldn't run to get away from these strangers that would come back to the ranch, and he couldn't run from them if they tried to catch him. But then it turned out that the injury wasn't a problem after all. So I'm thinking that when I edit the novel, I'm going to have to adjust it so that the injury wasn't just a minor thing. It's not a big deal either, but it needs to have some kind of significance, because I go back to that in these chapters. In chapter 6, I mentioned something about it being a good thing that Charlotte, Ryan, and the 2 kids stayed at the ranch and were isolated together with Kenny and Penny so that they could help with the ranch and running it. It turned out that Kenny's injury was quite important after all, because he was limping and it still hurt, but he rode horses anyway to herd the cattle. I don't know if he has made the injury worse, but it hasn't fully healed yet. I don't know what it's called, but maybe the leg is broken now, or maybe the fracture just hasn't healed. But he was limping and it hurt, but he rode horses, and now he can't ride horses because he needs to stay off horses and try to protect his leg. And so they've been kind of training Charlotte and Ryan, maybe mostly Ryan, to ride horses to herd the cattle now that Kenny can't do it himself. Maybe Penelope could do it, but I don't think she's really interested in riding horses and taking care of the cattle, so she's still just doing the chores she normally does. But yes, that was chapter 6. Chapter 7. For chapter 7, I wrote 3,464 words. I don't think I mentioned how long it took for me to write chapter 6, but I spent approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes writing chapter 6, and I spent approximately 1 hour and a half writing chapter 7. So in total I have written 6,573 words. And if you take 1 hour and 45 minutes and 1 hour and a half and put those times together, then I have spent about 3 hours and 15 minutes writing these 2 chapters. So I think that's all right for a day's work. I don't get to work on my novel every weekday, unfortunately, but when I do quite a bit on my novel. So far I have written 1 chapter in 1 writing blog, and then 2 chapters, and then 2 more, and then 2 more today. Okay, so for chapter 7 I wrote 3 scenes. They are all in the same chapter, but the first scene is when my main character is at home. Someone calls her on the phone in the middle of the night and wakes her up, and Kenny is woken up as well. It's her brother-in-law that calls to tell her that Penelope's sister is going to have a baby right now. So if she wants to be there when it happens, she needs to go now. And then Kenny is kind of asked too if he wants to come along, but he says no, he'd better stay at the ranch and take care of that. And one of them needs to be there when the others get up and get ready for the day. No one says he actually needs to do that, but I think it's just an excuse for him to stay and not having to go out in the real world and then dealing with stuff like that. And so Kenny stays at home and Penelope gets up and gets ready. We don't hear that, but she just says to her brother-in-law that, yes, you can count on me, I'll be there. And then I have a time skip, and then she's at the hospital. She gets to the hospital and meets her brother-in-law, Dustin. And Dustin is freaking out because, the contractions are close together and it's going to happen soon, but it's a bit troublesome. And then Penelope assures her that she can help him and they can make her push together. But there are some complications, and then Penelope's sister is rushed out of the room. I called her Peyton. So it's Peyton, her sister, and Dustin, her brother-in-law. But Peyton is rushed out of the room on the hospital bed, and the nurses and the doctor are just rushing away with her. And so Penelope and Dustin stay behind, and they have a bit of a conversation, but then nothing really happens. My main character just can only tell Dustin that, okay, things will be fine and we'll take one thing at a time, and I'm sure everything is going according to plan. Then I have another time skip, and then the baby is finally born. There were some complications, and then a nurse comes out and tells Dustin that the baby is born now, or not born. The baby is out in the world now because they had to do a C-section. The nurse assures Penelope and Dustin that the baby and the mother are fine, but Dustin can come and see the baby and his girlfriend or wife, of course. And Penelope is told that she can come and see them too, but that's a bit later. So she's left behind, but only for a little while, and then someone comes to get her. I needed to get Dustin out of the way and to go see his newborn baby, and so that Penelope would be alone when she gets a phone call, another phone call. And so this time it's her mother calling, and her mother called to inform Penelope that her aunt died, and it's her mother's sister, Kathy. I just came up with a name, so I don't know what else I should call these new characters. I didn't plan on it, or I didn't really give these extra characters any names, but those names are less important than my main characters' names, I think. Penelope gets this call from her mother that her aunt is dead, and they talk about this, and they both find it strange, but mostly sad, of course. And they talk about family life, and I also weave in something about Penelope not always being fully content with the life that she has chosen, or she tells her mom that she's happy with the life she's got. But her mom is like, oh, sometimes I wish that you had never met or never married Kenny, because now that you live on this ranch, you barely have time to come and see your family anymore. And that's sad, but Penelope is like, I have never regretted the decision I made, even though it means that I don't have time for much. But her mom says that you have to promise me that you stop up once in a while and think about things and consider whether you are happy or not. And then Penelope kind of brushes it off and says, oh, I don't really have time to stop and think about things and consider stuff like that. Maybe it's good and maybe it's bad that she doesn't have time to think about things, but I leave some of it up to the reader, because I'm hoping that some of these things that they don't say or say between the lines are clear enough for the reader to go, okay, maybe Penelope isn't fully happy about this, or maybe she is. It's up to interpretation. Yes, but these three scenes all revolve around the birth of this new baby and the death of the aunt. And that's what I had in my outline for this chapter. I can read you what I have in my outline for this chapter that I have just told you about. But in my outline I have stated, life goes on. A lot of people survived and there's hope for the future. However, something strange seems to be going on in the female main character's family. She had a niece, but then right after the baby was born, her aunt died. So these few things would take up several days or months maybe to have those things evolve, because I stated in the previous chapter, in chapter 6, that Peyton, I didn't name her in that chapter, but I stated that Penelope's sister is or was in the 3rd trimester, and that Charlotte is in the 2nd trimester, I think. Maybe it's the 1st, but how far they are in their pregnancy. And then I needed to do that time skip for the baby to be born, because that's the catalyst. That's the event that causes the aunt to die. So it's sad. But Penelope and her mom talk about this strange death, because everything was fine and she was happy, and she had just gotten this news that the baby is going to be born, and then she just dropped to the floor. But it's quite close to Penelope herself, because it's her mother's sister who died. But yes, I think that's basically it. I don't think, and I don't hope, that I have forgotten to tell you about something regarding these 2 chapters that I have written today and talked to you about. The only thing left to say is how I think it went. And I would like to say that it went pretty smoothly today. The words flowed quite well, and I won't say that the words wrote themselves, because I needed to sit here, spend the time and write the words, and it went pretty fast. I would like to think that just because I write fast, it doesn't mean that the writing is bad. So fast words do not equal bad words. That's at least how I would like to see it. I can always improve the writing itself in the editing, but it's important to get these bigger things in place before I expand too much on the story. Basically, I think it went all right, and I have written quite a lot today, and so I think it's a good place to stop. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this writing vlog, and I hope you will watch the next one. Until then, take care. Thank you for watching.